So we heard already tonight that we have a special portion that was chanted in the Torah. And it was a portion that happens, I'm caught on a flower. It's a portion that celebrates the Israelites' freedom, that they come to the shores of the sea, and then the waves part, and we read the story. Now, some people here might know the story of Nachshon. Nachshon, the midrash teaches us, was very brave and courageous, and he was the first one to step into the sea when it wasn't quite clear yet that they were going to part. The sea was going to part. But I bet that nobody here has heard of Nachshon's sister. Her name was Shulamit. Now, Shulamit lived with her brother Nachshon in Egypt, and she had a special connection with animals. In fact, there happened to be a whole bunch of frogs all over the land at some point, and she took one in as a pet. She cared for it, she fed it locusts even, and she learned about the animals. She was able to tell a monkey or a hippo just based on their behavior and their stripes. She was fascinated by the animals. One day there was a jackal. Does anyone know what a jackal is? Do you know what a jackal is? Tell me. It's like a dog, that's right. It's a little more wolf-like than a dog, but it is very much like a dog. So a dog came, and Shulamit adopted the dog. She started caring for it, and it stayed with her, and it followed everything she did. Then one day, Shulamit and Nachshon, and believe it or not, the entire Israelite people had to get up and leave their homes. And why? What a great question, Sophia. Why? Well, what were they doing in Egypt? Slavery. Was slavery fun? No, it was not fun, right? And so the Israelites Moses had gone to Pharaoh and said, let my people go. And finally Pharaoh said, go. So they needed to leave super fast. Oh yes, Eden, do you have something else to tell me about this story, please? Oh, something to tell me about slavery. Okay, what would you like to tell me about slavery? It is sometimes fun for the people who are adopting the slaves. We can unpack that one later. We're going to go with the fact that the Israelites were trying to get out of slavery. So Nachshon and Shulamit and all the Israelites, Kira, I'll get you in a minute, okay, went and they raced out of Egypt. And the jackal that Shulamit had adopted and her frog, the frog was in a little pouch on the camel. They came too. And they walked, and then suddenly everybody stopped. They stopped because they got to this huge sea. And they didn't know how they were going to move forward. Are you going to tell me how they moved forward, Kira? The story I'm telling sort of connects to Passover. Believe it or not, you're 100% correct. And the weird thing is that sometimes we read the stories in Torah at a slightly different time of year than we celebrate the holidays. So we will come back to this story, you are right, in only a few months. However, right now, Shulamit and Nachshon and all the Israelites are on the shores of the Red Sea, and there's this huge body of water in front of them, and they're not exactly sure where to go. This is where Nachshon comes in, right? He starts going into the water, and suddenly it splits. But once it splits, the Israelites start walking on the ground. And the grown-ups weren't quite sure what this freedom thing was about. They were a little nervous because they knew how to live in Egypt, but they weren't so sure what was waiting for them on the other side. But the kids were in awe. They looked up. They saw the animals that were swimming in the walls of the ocean. And Shulamit, who loved animals so much, she had always heard about sharks and dolphins, but she'd never seen them before. And suddenly, she was seeing them in the walls of the sea. All of a sudden, Shulamit was walking, and there was a face looking right out at her from the water. It was a dolphin. And that dolphin winked at her, turned to swim away, and Shulamit grabbed the tail of the dolphin. And suddenly she was flying through the water. Has anyone here ever swum with dolphins? Maybe? Yeah? Okay, so they're pretty big, right? And you can hold it and they pull you. So that's what was happening in the Red Sea to Shulamit. And suddenly she felt this connection. There was something that she shared with that being. And just as she realized she needed a breath, the dolphin jumped out of the water and she took the biggest breath of her life. And it was filled with the appreciation of everything that was around her. Now, she swam a little bit more with the dolphins. At this point, the Israelites had all crossed to the other side, and they stopped to stare. And the Egyptians who were following, right? The Egyptians were closing in, but they saw this girl flying with a dolphin, swimming with a dolphin, and they stopped to stare. And suddenly, the Israelites said, you know what? That's what freedom looks like. The ability to fly, to be connected with another human being. Not another human, another being. Doesn't have to be human, that's the whole point. You can be connected with what's around you. And while the grown-ups were focused on the muck and the mud that they were walking through, the kids had something to offer because they looked up and they could appreciate all of the beauty that was around them in this miracle. That is what their freedom felt like. Shabbat shalom.